Virginia, 1839. The town of Blackwood Hollow was small, quiet, and forgettable. Nestled between thick forests and tobacco fields, it was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and nothing ever changed. Until one night, inside the orphan house, the caretaker, Mrs. Eleanor Graves, had already put the children to bed. She later claimed she heard a knock. Not loud, but deliberate. 3 slow taps. She opened the door. Outside stood 2 men in dark coats. Their hats were pulled low. They carried sealed envelopes. One spoke calmly. "We are here on behalf of the Commonwealth." They presented documents. Stamped. Official looking. The storm made it hard to read clearly. Mrs. Graves would later insist the papers authorized the immediate relocation of selected minors. Selected minors. 19 names were listed. Exactly 19. Why those children? The documents did not explain. The orphan house stood at the edge of town. It wasn't large. Just a 2-story brick building with narrow windows and a wooden cross above the door. Officially, it was called Blackwood Children's Relief Home. It housed 32 children. Most were orphans of illness. Some were abandoned. A few had parents who simply could not afford to feed them. The home was funded partially by church donations. And partially by private benefactors whose names were never publicly listed. For years, nothing unusual happened there. Until March 17, 1839. The storm that covered everything. That night, a violent thunderstorm rolled over Blackwood Hollow. Rain fell hard enough to drown out shouting. Wind rattled shutters. Lightning cracked across the sky. Most townsfolk stayed inside. But one man did not. A stable worker named Thomas Reed was finishing late chores when he saw something strange. 2 black wagons. No lanterns. No town markings. No driver uniforms. They moved slowly through the mud toward the orphan house. Thomas remembered thinking. No one visits at this hour. Especially not during a storm. Inside the orphan house, the caretaker, Mrs. Eleanor Graves, had already put the children to bed. She later claimed she heard a knock. Not loud, but deliberate. 3 slow taps. She opened the door. Outside stood 2 men in dark coats. Their hats were pulled low. They carried sealed envelopes. One spoke calmly. "We are here on behalf of the Commonwealth." They presented documents. Stamped. Official looking. The storm made it hard to read clearly. Mrs. Graves would later insist the papers authorized the immediate relocation of selected minors. Selected minors. 19 names were listed. Exactly 19. Why those children? The documents did not explain. The removal. According to later testimonies, the men did not shout. They did not use force. But they did not allow questions. The 19 children were woken quietly. Told they were being moved for better opportunity. Some cried. Some were confused. One older boy reportedly asked, "Will we come back?" No one answered. They were wrapped in blankets and led into the rain. The storm swallowed their small footsteps. Thomas Reed, watching from a distance, saw the wagon doors close. He counted. 1, 2, 3. He reached 19. Then the wagons rolled away. Not toward the main road. But toward the forest path leading north. Toward land rarely traveled at night. The morning after. When the storm cleared at sunrise, something felt wrong. The orphan house was too quiet. Inside, 13 children remained. 19 beds were empty. Mrs. Graves told the local pastor that officials had ordered the relocation. But when the pastor asked to see the documents, They were gone. Mrs. Graves claimed the men took them back. That was the first problem. The second problem was worse. When town clerk Benjamin Holloway checked county records, there was no authorization for child relocation. No signatures. No transportation logs. Nothing. It was as if the removal had never been scheduled. The town attempted to track the children. They contacted Richmond officials. They sent letters to neighboring counties. Every reply said the same thing. No transfer record found. Then something even stranger happened. Within weeks, several town documents were updated. The original orphan registry, which had listed 32 children, now listed only 13. The 19 names were missing. Erased. As if they had never lived there at all. Benjamin Holloway swore he had written those names himself. He remembered them. He remembered the ink. But in the official book, they were gone. The first whisper. By summer of 1839, rumors began spreading. Some believed the children had been sold as labor. Others believed wealthy families had adopted them secretly. But one whisper frightened the town more than any other. A farmer living near the northern woods claimed he saw lantern lights deep in the forest weeks after the storm. Not campfires. Not hunters. But structured lights. Moving in patterns. He claimed he heard children's voices. Carried faintly through trees. When he approached, the lights vanished. And the forest fell silent. Mrs. Graves' breakdown. Months later, Mrs. Eleanor Graves changed her story. She admitted something disturbing. The men who came that night were not strangers. She had seen one of them before. At a private meeting months earlier. A meeting held in the basement of the church. Attended by town elites. Wealthy landowners. And a visiting official from Richmond. She claimed she overheard one sentence. The Commonwealth has approved Phase 1. Phase 1 of what? She never knew. But after she revealed this, she was removed from her position. Declared unstable. And sent to live with distant relatives. She never spoke publicly again. Town clerk Benjamin Holloway traveled personally to Richmond in late 1839. He demanded answers. He asked for documentation. He was denied access. A state officer reportedly told him, "There are matters beyond local jurisdiction." When Holloway returned home, he stopped speaking about the children entirely. Friends described him as frightened. One night, he burned personal papers in his fireplace. After that, he never mentioned March 17 again. 19 children. No records. No graves. No adoption papers. No death certificates. And official documents quietly rewritten. The storm had washed away footprints. But it had not erased memory. Blackwood Hollow never forgot. Even if the state tried to. And this was only the beginning. Because what truly happened to the 19 children was far darker than anyone imagined. By the end of 1839, Blackwood Hollow had returned to routine. Shops reopened. Church bells rang. Tobacco fields were harvested. But no one forgot the storm. And no one forgot the 19 empty beds. Even if the records pretended they had never existed. The man who wouldn't let it go. There was one person in Blackwood who refused to accept the silence. Samuel Carter. He was a schoolteacher. Quiet. Observant. Not wealthy. Not powerful. But he had taught several of the missing children how to read. He remembered their handwriting. Their faces. Their laughter. And he knew they had existed. When the official orphan registry changed, Samuel noticed immediately. The pages looked newer. The ink darker. He compared the paper fibers under candlelight. They did not match the older entries. Someone had replaced entire pages. That was not a clerical mistake. That was deliberate. The map of the northern woods. Samuel began asking questions discreetly. He learned something few townsfolk knew. The forest north of Blackwood Hollow did not belong to the town. It belonged to a private holding called the Ashcroft Trust. The trust had been established only 3 years earlier. Its listed purpose: land preservation and agricultural development. But no crops were grown there. No farms operated. No families lived on that land. It remained fenced and guarded. And strangely, the land records showed multiple purchases made by wealthy donors from Richmond, including one name that appeared frequently: Edmund Ashcroft. A state advisor. A man rumored to have influence far beyond his official title. In January 1840, Samuel ventured toward the forest. He did not enter the guarded land directly. Instead, he followed the river that bordered it. After walking nearly 2 miles, he discovered something unexpected. An old stone chapel. Collapsed roof. Broken stained glass. Long abandoned. But not entirely. Footprints in the mud. Fresh. And smaller ones among them. Child-sized. Samuel felt his heart race. He stepped inside. The air smelled damp. Cold. And something metallic. In the center of the chapel floor, wooden planks had been nailed over what appeared to be a cellar entrance. The nails were new. The wood was new. Everything else was old. Someone was using this place. Recently. The first sound. Samuel returned 2 nights later. This time, he waited until dark. Hidden behind trees. Snow lightly covered the ground. Around midnight, he saw them. Lantern lights. Moving slowly through the forest. Not chaotic. Not random. Organized. 4 men. Leading 2 wagons. The wagons stopped near the chapel. Samuel stayed still. He watched. The men entered the chapel. Moments later, he heard it. A faint sound. From below. Not wind. Not animals. A sound that froze his blood. Children's voices. Soft. Weak. Crying. What was beneath the chapel? Samuel did not act immediately. He knew confronting armed men would mean death. Instead, he observed. For 3 nights. Each time, the wagons returned. Each time, lanterns descended into the chapel cellar. And each time, the faint cries continued. He noticed something else. The men carried crates. Large wooden crates. Sealed. And on one crate, under lantern light, he glimpsed a symbol burned into the wood. A circular seal. With the words: Commonwealth Authority, Property of the State. Property of the State. Determined to find proof, Samuel broke into the town clerk's office one evening. He searched financial logs. Land transfers. Donations. That's when he found it. A private ledger. Hidden behind older tax records. The ledger listed monthly payments from the Ashcroft Trust. Paid to Blackwood Children's Relief Home. Several church officials. 2 unnamed transport contractors. And beside one entry was a chilling phrase. Phase 1, relocation complete. Dated March 18, 1839. The morning after the storm. Samuel's mind raced. If Phase 1 was the removal of 19 children, what was Phase 2? He returned to the chapel once more. This time, he waited until the wagons left. Near dawn, he approached the building quietly. The cellar door was unlocked. As if someone had grown careless. He stepped down the stone stairs. The air was suffocating. Damp. Cold. And heavy with fear. There were chains attached to wooden beams. Blankets scattered across the floor. Empty bowls. And chalk markings on the walls. Numbers. Tallies. 19 vertical lines. Then. 5 more beneath them. 5. Had more children been brought here? Or had some been taken away? Samuel's hands shook. Then he saw something even worse. On a crude wooden table. Medical instruments. Metal tools. Not surgical grade. But not farming tools either. And beside them. Glass bottles. Filled with a cloudy liquid. The realization. This was not simple relocation. This was not adoption. This was not labor transfer. This was experimentation. But what kind? Why children? Why secrecy? Samuel remembered a rumor from years earlier. A proposal discussed quietly in Richmond. A plan to study human adaptability in extreme conditions. Testing resilience. Testing endurance. Testing the effects of isolation. Most dismissed it as absurd. But now, 19 children had vanished. And beneath a chapel, evidence of confinement existed. As Samuel climbed the cellar stairs, he heard something behind him. A floorboard creaked above. He froze. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. A voice spoke from the darkness. You should not be here. Samuel slowly turned. A tall man stood at the top of the stairs. Well dressed. Calm. Unafraid. Samuel recognized him immediately. Edmund Ashcroft. The same name on the land records. The trust owner. The state advisor. Ashcroft stepped forward slightly. You've seen too much. Samuel tried to speak. But fear tightened his throat. Ashcroft continued. Blackwood Hollow is part of something larger. You cannot understand it. Then he said something that confirmed every suspicion. The children are contributing to the future of this commonwealth. Contributing. Samuel realized. The state was involved. Not rogue criminals. Not random kidnappers. But sanctioned power. And if he did not escape, he would join the missing. That night, Samuel Carter fled Blackwood Hollow. He left behind his home. His school. Everything. But he carried something critical. Pages torn from the hidden ledger. Proof of payments. Proof of Phase 1. Proof that the removal of 19 children was planned. Authorized. And funded. But what exactly was happening beneath that chapel? And what was Phase 2? That answer would be even more disturbing. The rain stopped at exactly 3:17 a.m. No thunder. No wind. Just silence. Ethan was awake. He hadn't slept properly since the night he saw the figure standing at the edge of his field. The shape. The height. The stillness. And now. The animals were quiet again. He sat up in bed inside the old farmhouse on the outskirts of York. His heart was already racing, as if it knew something his mind didn't. Then came the sound. 3 slow knocks. Not on the front door. Not on the walls. From beneath the floorboards. The ground breathing. Ethan grabbed the flashlight he kept beside his bed. He didn't turn on the lights. He didn't want the house to feel alive. Step by step, he moved toward the kitchen. The knocking continued. Slow. Deliberate. Like something buried, was trying to communicate. The cellar hatch in the kitchen floor was slightly open. He never left it open. Never. Cold air seeped upward like breath from a grave. Ethan swallowed hard and pulled the hatch open fully. The wooden ladder creaked as he descended. The cellar was small. Stone walls. Dirt floor. Old shelves with rusted jars left behind by the previous owner. But something had changed. The back wall. There was a crack in the stone, one that hadn't been there before. And from that crack, a faint glow. Not bright. Not warm. Just pale. Like moonlight trapped underground. The hidden chamber. Ethan pressed his hand against the cracked stone. It shifted. Loose. He stepped back and kicked it. The stone collapsed inward, revealing a narrow passage behind the cellar wall. His flashlight flickered. Of course it did. He stood there, breathing heavily, staring into darkness. Every instinct screamed to go back upstairs. Lock the hatch. Pretend none of this was happening. But something deeper pulled him forward. Curiosity. Or destiny. He crouched and stepped inside the hidden passage. The air smelled ancient. Not rot. Not damp. Old. Like a place sealed for centuries. After a few feet, the tunnel widened into a small underground chamber. And that's when he saw it. The door without a handle. In the center of the chamber stood a wooden door. Freestanding. Not attached to walls. Not connected to anything. Just standing upright in the dirt. It was old oak, covered in carved symbols. Symbols Ethan recognized from the diary he found in the attic. The same twisted marks. The same spirals. The same eye carved into the center. And written beneath the eye. One word. Watcher. Ethan's chest tightened. The diary had mentioned it. It does not enter. It waits. Suddenly, the flashlight went out. Complete darkness swallowed him. Then. A whisper. Right behind him. You opened it. Ethan spun around. Nothing there. But he wasn't alone anymore. He could feel it. The air was heavier. Breathing closer. The voice in the dark. The door creaked. Slowly. Without being touched. A thin line of darkness appeared as it opened inward. Not light beyond. Not another room. Just blackness. Deeper than the cellar. Deeper than night. From inside the door. A low, distorted voice. You were meant to. Ethan backed away. His heel hit something behind him. Stone. The wall. There was nowhere to go. The whisper continued. You see us now. Plural. Us. His mind flashed back to the first night. The tall figure in the field. But now he remembered. There had been more shapes behind it. Watching. Always watching, the darkness inside the door began moving. Not like smoke. Not like shadow. Like something alive. It stretched outward, forming long, thin shapes, like fingers. Reaching. Not rushing. Just, waiting. Ethan felt something brush against his wrist. Cold. Freezing. His breath caught in his throat. You carry the mark. Mark. Suddenly, a burning sensation spread across his left shoulder. He screamed and fell to his knees. Under his shirt, something was forming on his skin. The same eye symbol. Etched. Burning. Branded. The voice whispered one final sentence. The house was never empty. Then the door slammed shut. The flashlight flickered back on. The chamber was empty. No fingers. No movement. No voice. And the wooden door. Gone. As if it had never existed. Only dirt remained. Above ground. Ethan scrambled back through the tunnel and climbed into the kitchen. He slammed the cellar hatch shut. Locked it. Bolted it. Then collapsed against the wall. He pulled off his shirt. There it was. The eye. Perfectly carved into his skin. Not bleeding. Not injured. Just, there. Like it had always belonged. Outside. The sheep began screaming. Not bleeding. Screaming. Ethan ran to the window. And froze. Across the field. Not one. Not two. But dozens of tall, thin silhouettes. Standing motionless. All facing the house. All watching. And in the center. The tallest one raised its head slowly. And tilted it. As if smiling. The sheep stopped screaming all at once. Silence flooded the field. Dozens of tall silhouettes stood in the darkness beyond Ethan's farmhouse, unmoving. Their shapes were too thin. Too straight. Too unnatural to be human. And every one of them faced him. Ethan staggered back from the window. His shoulder burned. The eye-shaped mark carved into his skin pulsed like a heartbeat. Once. Twice. Then it stopped. The figures in the field vanished. Not by running. Not by fading. They were simply, gone. The first sign. Ethan didn't sleep. At sunrise, he convinced himself it had been exhaustion. Stress. Hallucination. Until the first villager arrived. Old Mr. Carter from down the lane. "Morning, lad," Carter said, stepping onto the porch. "You all right?" Ethan nodded, though his hands trembled. "Animals acting strange?" Carter asked quietly. Ethan's heart skipped. "How do you know?" Carter didn't answer immediately. He stared at Ethan's face for a long moment. Then his expression changed. Not fear. Recognition. "You've seen them." It wasn't a question. Carter refused to step inside the house. They spoke outside, near the gate, where the morning fog still clung to the fields. "You're not the first," Carter said. "But you're the first in many years." "First what?" Ethan demanded. "The first marked." Ethan's blood turned cold. Carter's eyes drifted to Ethan's shoulder instinctively. "They choose one," he continued. "Always one. The house calls them." "The house?" Ethan whispered. Carter nodded slowly. "That farmhouse stood long before York expanded this far. Built over something older. Something sealed." Ethan remembered the hidden cellar passage. The door. The voice. "You knew?" he asked. Carter's silence was answer enough. "The ceiling. There was a ritual," Carter said at last. "Generations ago. The villagers sealed whatever was beneath that land." "Sealed what?" Ethan pressed. "They never named it. Naming gives power." The old man lowered his voice. "But they wrote about watchers. Tall ones. Silent ones. They don't enter unless invited." Ethan's stomach twisted. "You opened it." The whisper echoed in his mind. "I didn't invite anything," Ethan said sharply. Carter shook his head. "You moved in. The mark awakens." That night, the burning returned. Ethan was in the kitchen when it happened. The eye on his shoulder glowed faintly beneath his skin. The lights flickered. Then every mirror in the house cracked at once. Not shattered. Cracked. A single thin fracture running down the center of each reflection. Ethan turned slowly toward the hallway mirror. His reflection stared back. But it wasn't copying him. It blinked, slower. And smiled. Ethan didn't. The reflection's head tilted. Just like the tallest figure in the field. Then it spoke. Without sound. The lips formed words. Open again. The pull. The cellar hatch rattled violently. Boom. 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 Ethan backed away. No, he whispered. The mark burned hotter. His knees buckled. Something wasn't attacking him. It was guiding him. The hatch stopped shaking. Silence. Then slowly. It opened by itself. The darkness below felt deeper than before. Calling him. His feet moved. Not by choice. Step by step toward the cellar. He tried to resist. He couldn't. The eye mark throbbed like a second heartbeat controlling him. Beneath the house. The hidden passage had widened. The underground chamber was larger now. And the wooden door stood in the center again. Waiting. This time, symbols glowed faintly across its surface. The carved eye pulsed. Alive. You are the key. The voice was clearer now. Stronger. Not behind him. Inside him. Ethan reached the door. His hand trembled inches from the wood. If I open it, what happens? He whispered. The answer came instantly. You remember. Remember? Before he could stop himself. His fingers touched the door. And everything exploded into light. He wasn't in the cellar anymore. He stood in the same field. But centuries earlier. Torches burned. Villagers circled something in the center. A pit. Inside the pit. Darkness moved. Tall shapes writhed like living shadows. A younger version of Mr. Carter stood among them. No. Not Carter. An ancestor. And beside him. Another man. One holding a child. A boy. The child had the same mark on his shoulder. Ethan staggered back. The boy looked up. It was him. Same face. Different time. The villagers chanted. The marked boy stepped forward willingly. The shadows reached for him. The door slammed shut. The memory shattered. The truth. Ethan fell back into the present, gasping. He understood now. He wasn't chosen randomly. He was part of a cycle. The Watchers did not invade. They waited for one born with the mark. One who could open the door from both sides. One who belonged to them. The voice whispered gently now. You are not prey. A pause. You are bridge. The wooden door creaked open slightly. Not darkness beyond this time. But countless eyes. Watching. Waiting. Ethan's reflection appeared inside the doorway again. Smiling. And behind him. Dozens of tall figures stepped forward from the shadows. Closer than before. Much closer. The voice spoke one final sentence. It is time to let us in. The door stood half open. Beyond it, no darkness now. Only eyes. Hundreds of them. Unblinking. Endless. Ethan couldn't breathe. The mark on his shoulder burned so intensely he could smell his own skin scorching. You are bridge. The words echoed inside his skull. He tried to step back. He couldn't move. His body no longer fully belonged to him. The choice that wasn't a choice. For a moment, silence returned. The underground chamber beneath the farmhouse felt suspended in time. Ethan thought of the memory. The boy in the past. Himself. Stepping forward willingly. He finally understood. The villagers hadn't sacrificed the marked child. The child had agreed. To keep the Watchers sealed. To hold the door from the inside. A living lock. And now. The cycle had reached him. The voice softened. You may close it. A pause. Or open it forever. Images flooded his mind. If he closed it, the mark would consume him. He would disappear like the others before him. Forgotten. But the village would remain safe. If he opened it, the watchers would enter the world above. Not in violence. Not in chaos. But in quiet observation. Watching humanity the way they always had. From the fields. From behind mirrors. From the corners of rooms at night. They didn't destroy. They witnessed. They waited. For something, the door opened wider. And Ethan saw them clearly now. Tall, impossibly thin beings made of shadow and starlight. Their bodies shifted like smoke, yet their outlines remained sharp. Where faces should have been. Only one enormous eye. Unblinking. Ancient. Not cruel. Not kind. Just eternal. They were older than the house. Older than the village. Older than York itself. They were not demons. They were not ghosts. They were witnesses to worlds rising and collapsing. Humanity had built its homes on a place that was never empty. Above the field. On the surface, the sky turned unnaturally still. No wind. No birds. The villagers stepped outside their homes one by one. They felt it. A shift. Something changing. Old Mr. Carter stood at his gate again. Whispering a prayer he barely remembered from childhood. Back in the cellar. Ethan made his decision. He stepped forward. Into the doorway. The mark on his shoulder glowed bright white. The watchers parted. Not attacking. Welcoming. You remember, they whispered together. And suddenly. He did. He remembered lifetimes. Standing in fields across centuries. Watching empires grow. Watching wars ignite. Watching cities burn. Watching humans love, destroy, rebuild. He had been the bridge before. Over and over. Reborn each time the seal weakened. Always returning to this land. Always to the farmhouse. Always to the door. The opening. Ethan turned one last time toward the cellar behind him. He could still go back. Seal it. Let the cycle repeat. But humanity had changed. The world had changed. Maybe it was time the watchers stopped hiding. He placed both hands on the door. And pushed it fully open. The chamber exploded with silent light. Above ground. The farmhouse windows shattered outward. A wave of invisible force rippled across the fields. The villagers fell to their knees. And from the earth. Tall figures rose slowly from the soil itself. Dozens. Then hundreds. Across the countryside. Standing still. Facing the horizon. Watching. The aftermath. By dawn. Everything looked normal again. The farmhouse stood quiet. The field was empty. No marks in the soil. No broken glass. No sign anything had happened. Except. Ethan was gone. Inside the cellar, the hidden chamber had collapsed. No door. No symbols. No passage. Just stone. Old Mr. Carter returned that morning. He stepped inside cautiously. The house felt different. Not haunted. Not heavy. Just observed. As if unseen eyes lingered in every shadow. He noticed something on the kitchen table. A single message carved into the wood. We are here. In the weeks that followed, people across the world began reporting strange things. Not attacks. Not disasters. Just sightings. Tall silhouettes at the edge of forests. Figures standing atop buildings at night. Shapes reflected in mirrors that blinked half a second too late. Scientists couldn't explain it. Religious leaders called it revelation. Governments denied everything. But deep down, everyone felt it. The sense of being watched. Not hunted. Not judged. Just witnessed. And somewhere beyond sight, Ethan stood among them. No longer fully human. No longer fully shadow. The bridge had opened. And the watchers were no longer waiting outside. They were part of the world now. Silent. Still. Eternal. Watching humanity write its own ending.